On the morning of December 4th, 2020, firefighters in Lancaster, California, received the type of call that they often get: possible gas leak. A single-story home located on a quiet cul-de-sac called Century Circle. There were reportedly 4 children and 2 adults inside. When the firefighters arrived, nothing appeared especially wrong. There was no smoke, no flames, and no crowd of neighbors gathered on the street. It was one of those houses that seems to be trying very hard to avoid being noticed. Neighbors would later say the windows often appeared dark, as if they were covered from the inside. They almost never saw anyone outside in front of the house. The firefighters equipped themselves and headed to the door. They had been told 2 important things by the caller. First, the family had become strangely silent. Second, the father, a personal trainer, had suddenly stopped responding to his clients, which was completely out of character for him. The fear was that everyone inside might have been overcome by gas while sleeping. Inside the house, it was very quiet. The firefighters searched the rooms, checking for the gas leak. They did not find one. However, what they did discover would trigger one of the most disturbing child murder cases in recent California history. It would leave 2 surviving boys with memories that prosecutors would later describe as unimaginable horror. To understand how we arrived at that house on that morning, we need to go back just a few days and a few miles away to a small community of people logging into Zoom workouts during the pandemic. The man leading those workouts was Maurice Jewel Taylor Sr. He was 34 years old in late 2020, a personal trainer who used to work at a physical therapy and fitness center in Santa Monica, but shifted to remote sessions when COVID shut everything down. Clients describe him as mellow, so reliable, so responsive, a kind and gentle man, and a devoted family man who worked very hard to support his children. He lived in Lancaster with his partner Natalie Sumiko Brothwell and their 4 children, Maliaka, 13, Maurice Jr., 12, 2 younger sons, 8 and 9. On paper, nothing about this family screams headline story. There are no recent calls to police about the kids, no documented history with Child Protective Services that anyone will publicly confirm. A sheriff's lieutenant would later say there had been no recent visits to the home for child welfare complaints, and to his knowledge, none of the children had prior cases with the County Department of Children and Family Services. But people close to Maurice did notice some cracks. One longtime client says Maurice seemed to be living under tremendous pressure. The marriage, according to that same client, could sound contentious on the phone. The client remembers hearing Natalie yelling at Maurice during calls at the gym, loud enough that it was embarrassing. Maurice would apologize while she shouted. On top of that, there was the pressure almost everyone felt in late 2020. The pandemic in full swing, schools closed, kids at home all day, money tight enough that one client would later say, "I knew they were not out of town. They did not have money to travel." The Sunday after Thanksgiving, November 29th, 2020, is the day prosecutors say everything happened. Inside that house on Century Circle, Maurice and Natalie will later be accused, and eventually convicted, of stabbing and decapitating their 2 oldest children, 13-year-old Maliaka and 12-year-old Maurice Jr. What led up to that moment inside the home is not public. There is no recording, no surviving adult witness telling the story. The only people who were there and old enough to fully understand are the 2 younger boys, and their statements have been protected as much as possible. What we do know is that, from the outside, the first sign that something was wrong did not come from the kids. It came from Maurice's clients. That week, he does not send the link. He does not text to reschedule. He simply vanishes. At first, a few clients assume it is a mix-up. Then they start texting each other, asking, "Have you heard from Maurice? Did he cancel with you?" Each day that passes, they grow more worried. Some try calling the sheriff's department. One calls the property manager for the house. Another, an attorney named Howard Kern, decides it is serious enough to call the fire department and report what he fears might be a gas leak. He tells the operator there are 4 children and 2 adults in the home, and that no one has heard from them. He is afraid they have been overcome by fumes in their sleep. Around the same time, neighbors start to notice something, too. A smell. They already thought the house was strange. One nearby property owner would later say the windows looked dark, like they were blacked out, and that the family almost never came outside. But now there is something worse. A foul odor drifting out into the cul-de-sac. The clients are worried the family is dead from carbon monoxide. The neighbors are worried something else has happened. They are all right to be afraid. They are just afraid of the wrong thing. Inside that house, not everyone is dead. 2 little boys are still alive, and for the past several days, according to prosecutors, they have been trapped in a nightmare their parents created. Prosecutors say that on November 29th, Maurice and Natalie killed their older children in separate bedrooms, stabbing them and then severing their heads. What they did next is what pushes this case from horrific into almost cinematic in its cruelty. Instead of hiding what they had done, they allegedly showed the bodies to their 2 younger sons, ages 8 and 9. The boys were forced to look at their brother and sister, now dead, in their rooms. Court documents and later news releases say that the parents then kept the bodies in the house for about 5 days and confined the surviving boys to their bedrooms without food, with those images burned into their minds. In those 5 days, the rest of the world thought the family had simply gone quiet. Inside the home, time likely turned into something else entirely. There is no publicly released explanation from Maurice or Natalie that makes sense of this. There is no note, no manifesto, no clear story of delusion that has been made public. Authorities have called it simply what it looks like from the outside, a monstrous act of cruelty that shattered a family. When firefighters finally enter the house on December 4th, they are still thinking like firefighters. Gas leak, rescue, get in, get everyone out, ventilate the space. Instead, they find the bodies of Maliaka and Maurice Jr. in separate bedrooms. The sheriff's department will later say the children had stab wounds and lacerations, and the mayor of Lancaster will confirm publicly that both victims had been decapitated. There is no gas leak. There is, however, an active crime scene that looks like something out of a horror film. The surviving boys are taken to a hospital and then placed in the care of the Department of Children and Family Services, where officials say they begin receiving intensive mental health support. At first, only Maurice is charged. In early December 2020, he is arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of child abuse under circumstances likely to cause great bodily injury or death. Prosecutors say he faces decades to life in prison if convicted. From the beginning, there are questions about his mental state. Later that same month, a judge suspends the criminal proceedings and orders a mental competency evaluation, which delays the case. Meanwhile, the public keeps asking, what about the children's mother? We know that Natalie Brothwell was in the house when the bodies were found, and that she was questioned and released. At first, authorities do not accuse her of a crime. Almost a year passes. Then, in September 2021, there is a major shift. Prosecutors charge Natalie with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of felony child endangerment, saying she was also responsible for the deaths and for the abuse of the surviving boys. She is arrested at her home in Tucson, Arizona, and held on $1 million bail before being extradited back to California. Officials do not publicly explain what new evidence led to her arrest, but from this point forward, they treat both parents as fully responsible. On November 18, 2025, the jury returns its verdict. Maurice Jewel Taylor Sr. and Natalie Sumiko Brothwell are found guilty on all counts. The Los Angeles County District Attorney calls the case a monstrous act of cruelty that shattered an entire family, and says the young surviving brothers were left to live through unimaginable horror. Sentencing is scheduled for January 13, 2026. Both parents face life in state prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional term for the child abuse convictions. In the weeks after the murders, a friend of the children's maternal grandmother sets up a fundraiser. In that description, she talks about how the grandmother, Miss Deb, had once been very close to the kids, but had been pushed out of their lives over time. She had been begging for updates, any news about her grandchildren, only to find out in the worst possible way that 2 of them were gone. The director of Child Services in Los Angeles County later says that the surviving boys are receiving as much support and care as the agency can possibly provide. For the friends and clients who knew Maurice, who describe him as the nicest person they had ever met, there is a different kind of trauma. They trusted him with their physical health. Some watched him play with his kids between sessions. Now they are stuck trying to reconcile the man they thought they knew with what a jury says he did. And for everyone in that quiet little cul-de-sac, there is the memory of the day the firefighters showed up for a routine gas leak, and the entire neighborhood learned that there had been something very dark happening behind the blacked-out windows of that house. We still do not know why Maurice and Natalie did what they did. What we do know is that isolation, secrecy, and untreated pressure can be deadly inside a family. Tonight, we remember Maliaka and Maurice Jr., and we hope their younger brothers find some measure of healing after everything they were forced to survive. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video to be interesting, please like and subscribe for more weird, wild stories. Until next time, please stay safe out there, and as always, stay weird.